Good morning and welcome everyone to Compass Naturals Coffee Talk, our October 2023 edition. Come on in. We're very excited to have a very special guest with us today. And we welcome all you, our audience. This is being a live broadcast, and we will also record it on our Compass Natural YouTube page for those of you who may have missed the live event. All right. So I think we will get started. My name is Stephen Hoffman. I'm the principal of Compass Natural based in Boulder, Colorado. And with my co-host, Bill Capsalis, we are the hosts of Compass Naturals Coffee Talk. Want to welcome Annie Ryu, who's the CEO and founder of the Jackfruit Company and Jack and Annie's. We also want to thank our sponsors that make Compass Coffee Talk possible. We have a new sponsor, Compass Coffee. Annie, I believe you got some of that coffee to try yourself, and I know that we're
I
offering
did. Thanks
a
for sending
discount
that.
for our listeners. You're very welcome, and we thank our sponsor for sending it to you as well. Also, Presence Marketing, one of the largest independent brokers in the United States for natural and organic products, has been a tremendous supporter. And then as Compass Natural, and Bill and I both are former officers with Naturally Boulder. We are big supporters of the Naturally Network, and we enjoy having sponsors including Naturally Boulder, Naturally New York, and Naturally San Diego. Check out all the cities in which the Naturally Network is doing some amazing things for entrepreneurs out there. Annie Ryu, you are a young, inspiring entrepreneur out there pushing the boundaries of natural, organic, plant-based foods. You graduated first in your class at Harvard, which is no small feat. And yet you took that, and you and your brother, I think, went on a trip to India with these ideas in your heads about how are we going to help change the world for the better through business. And you came upon this huge football or bigger sized spiky green dense thing hanging off the sides of trees in the tropics. I've seen them and handled them. They're really fun kind of fruits, but tell us a little bit how you went from your kind of journey and landed on this very unique business, and how you kind of had to create the whole thing from scratch, including supply chain, everything. I mean, give us a little bit of background and we'll get into the conversation.
Okay. As you mentioned, I was in India, and it was actually when I was in college. I had started working in the nonprofit space, and I was planning to go to medical school, but wanted to do everything I could to change the world for the better. That's kind of how I was raised, and what I learned to be, why we're all here. I was really intrigued with social enterprise as a way to create impact, but also be able to scale that impact, because you're doing something that is also valued by the market, so is able to continue to be fueled by the market as it expands. Going back to the specifics of where I was focused on global health and how do we get the best solutions that already exist to people who don't have access to them today, because there are millions of people dying every year from things that we have cures for. I had worked across Latin America and then was working in India, and just continued to see that poverty was the root cause of everything else that I was trying to solve. So it was really random that on my first day in India, I stumbled across a jackfruit. It was this big green spiky thing sitting on the street, and I thought it was an Indian porcupine. I got invited to a jackfruit festival my first weekend in India. And these festivals have been going on for now more than a decade, in recognition of the fact that it's this amazing natural resource, and what a shame that it wasn't better connected to a market. It's something that is the highest yielding fruit crop in the world. It's drought resistant, it's regenerative, it's climate friendly as well. And it's something that you eat as much as you can, you give away as much as you can. And again, if you have 2 to 3 tons of fruit per tree per year, there's going to still be a lot of excess. And there wasn't a connection to a market. And so again, with poverty having been the core issue of all of the problems I was trying to solve, this to me looked like money growing on trees that we could enable farmers to access if we could build a supply chain to get it to market. Um, so that was the original aha. But then it was trying to figure out like how do you enable consumers on the other side of the world to make, to incorporate this into the way that we're eating. And so farmers were showing me all the different ways that they've been preparing jackfruit over the years. Candidly, when I was first told that jackfruit could be a meat alternative, I didn't believe it. um, and then one of the farmers made me a jackfruit burger, and I was blown away by how a plant could possibly be so similar to meat. And that led me to start exploring the meat alternative category for the first time, because growing up 18 years in Rochester, Minnesota, I thought that if you're a vegetarian, that meant that you're eating salads for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was no way to live. And so I had never considered that being vegetarian could possibly be so delicious and satisfying as it can be with a crop that is so similar to meat. So I started exploring the meat alternative category. Felt that the foods were, very confusing in terms of what they were made of, how they were made, why, some ingredients were in there that didn't seem like they should be in food. And then decided that that was really the point of entry to introduce consumers to this amazing crop, and started building the company. So today we operate the largest supply chain in the world for jackfruit, the largest brands of jackfruit foods, and also the leading R&D, which is a big part of how we enable consumers to enjoy like all of the amazing attributes that jackfruit has to offer.
Wow. Well, I'm really curious, Annie, about the dietary benefits of jackfruit. I know there's fiber, lots of fiber involved, right? What else do you get dietary wise from a jackfruit in terms of how does it help your overall dietary approach?
Yeah. Well, jackfruit has been called a superfood by many different sources. So I think there's the fiber aspect of it, certainly. I think relative to the US diet right now, the fiber is such a big piece because the average American gets less than half the amount of fiber we're supposed to have on a daily basis. Fiber comes from the cell wall of plants, and we're not eating enough plants. And so that in and of itself, you can list out all the other vitamins and minerals that it has. But if we can just, take the jackfruit and replace a substantial amount of meat, because we're generally eating too much protein, although we as Americans have an obsession with protein, and bring in the fiber, which we're by and large lacking pretty enormously, that's a huge solution. Jackfruit is in the meat alternative space. Also, one of the most important things to note is there's been a lot of concern about the level of fat and saturated fat in this category, and just concern about, okay, you say you're replacing meat with plants, but it has worse levels of saturated fat. The thing with jackfruit is that because it naturally has that sinuous nature of meat, it also has the juiciness of meat innately. And in fact, that's because of its structure and the fact that the fiber retains water. And so you have the juiciness of meat, but in fact, you have much lower fat and much lower calories. And so you're really able to deliver benefits of plants without the having to add back in all these problems. And so you think about what do we need from plant-based food, and jackfruit really is that solution. Beyond that, yes, it has protein, it's got vitamins, minerals, calcium, copper, manganese, magnesium, and different vitamins, A, D, and E.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thanks for clarifying. And I mean, like clearly in the name, fruit. It is a fruit. It grows on a tree, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really
Yeah.
weird for Americans to kind of grok that there's this giant thing called fruit.
Yeah, I was introduced to jackfruit in a raw food diet back about 20 plus years ago, and in particular, as Annie mentioned, because it has that quality that satisfies that craving for meat. It has that texture, that mouthfeel, the satiety. So
Yep.
that was first time, and then I've seen it at my friend Tom and Terry Newmark's farm down in Costa Rica, Finca Luna Nueva, and also Punta Mono. They're huge. So I'm really they when you spoke of like people try to give it away and everything, it reminds me of like zucchini of India when you get too
Right.
much zucchini in your garden and you
Yeah.
have to give it away. But what I found interesting in your fascinating story is not only did you go to, I've been to a squid festival in Monterey, so I understand like a jackfruit festival, but to be introduced that way to all the ways it's used, then you have to create this supply chain from the tree to the US and now create products that Americans will enjoy. And you mentioned about your innovation and your R&D and product development. And that's a really key piece of all this too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about the products. So you first came out with one line of products. You've expanded since then. So how did that all come to be? And I know you're in your seventh or eighth full year of business now. I'm trying to remember exactly, but I think it was 2015 when you really formalized. So yeah, tell us about that path to innovation, I guess.
It's been a journey. Actually, when I first started the company, we were focused on ripe jackfruit just because I'd never been introduced to the young jackfruit, which is the meat alternative. So the ripe jackfruit is months later in development on the tree. It's a completely different texture,
Huh.
flavor, different nutritional attributes. And so I was originally working on introducing consumers to dried fruit and realized through that process that it's very difficult to build a brand for dried fruit. And you really need more than one SKU in a category to build a brand.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it was sort of concurrent with some of those learnings that I was introduced to young jackfruit as a meat alternative by one of the farmers. And we entered the market as the Jackfruit Company after originally, trying the name Fruition, but having people pronounce it Fruition. And um, yeah, the Jackfruit Company was a very bold move at the time because no one had ever heard of jackfruit. And I was giving a presentation this morning and was so pleased that when I asked, "Have you heard of jackfruit?" everybody in the room raised their hand. But when we started this company, that was a rhetorical question. No one had heard of jackfruit, and it was just a conversation starter. Um, it was bold, but we knew that it was the right thing to do because even at that time, so many consumers of meat alternatives felt that they were too processed. And what was common across the category was everybody was saying, well, this is a hot dog, or this is, this is turkey slices or whatever. But they weren't really saying what it was made of or how it was made. And so we really went directly to the issue that this is jackfruit. And then at least somebody looking at it at the shelf could say, okay, what's jackfruit? And start the journey of learning about this amazing crop. Over the course of time, as we gained distribution on the Jackfruit Company, but we're still primarily targeting vegetarians and vegans, basically folks who, go to that set to pick up tofu, know how to cook with tofu, know how to make tofu taste good, which can be a surprisingly rare skill. Those folks are not afraid to cook with jackfruit, which is easier than tofu, but also more foreign than tofu. And so we were primarily speaking to more of a vegetarian and vegan audience. And so then this plant-based meat space started to come to be a thing. When I started the company, plant-based meat really wasn't a concept. It wasn't something that was a buzzword or anything. It just wasn't really there. And as plant-based meat became a thing, and many more people started coming to this category, not because they had chosen to be vegetarian or vegan, but because they were looking to do better for their health, better for the planet, better for animals. Then it was a new landscape, and we decided that we needed a brand that could work for folks who don't know how to cook with tofu and don't know how to cook with plain jackfruit, but know how to heat up sausages, chicken nuggets. And so we developed a line of items under Jack and Annie's that are super easy to prepare and enjoy and share for those who don't know tofu.
It's been really interesting to see that innovation pipeline. So you got investment a couple of years ago. You've been deploying that capital, I'm sure. Has the innovation pipeline expanded at all, or are you kind of slowing down for now, just trying to increase distribution? Where are you at right now in terms of the major challenges with the company?
We definitely are continuing to innovate. We actually launched into breakfast sandwiches this summer, and have continued to get more items on shelves. But I think one of the things that is really important to keep in mind in this category is that the present is driving the future. And I think that's always the case, but part of why it's so important here is because this is new category creation, what's going on right now with plant-based meat for a much broader audience than it had been before. Jackfruit itself is a new category then within a new category. And it's basically, the future is not a constant, right? It is something that is being created by what we're doing today. And we're always focused on basically making sure that we're putting out foods that are meeting consumer needs, that are responding to changes in the times, changes how consumers are thinking about the category, and what it is that they're looking for from brands. So if there's another brand that if there are 10 other brands that have X product, it's like, do consumers really want that? Again, from us, maybe and maybe not. And so innovation is something that is critical, I think, for all brands in this space, because plant-based meat didn't deliver on what all consumers were looking for. We think all of our foods are a key solution to that by putting the plant back in plant-based and really being, first and foremost, a delicious whole plant that's naturally meaty. But regardless, like, consumers are looking for these brands to, create new formats so that they can bring these items into their lives, and hopefully by continuing to put some innovative formats out there, we can bring new users into the brand who maybe hadn't gotten a chance to try it before.
Yeah, I'm really, like, a lot of our listeners are people working in brands or founders who are thinking about these challenges. So just a quick question for you, like, you do this all in Boulder? Why Boulder? And where do you manufacture? I'm sure some people are kind of curious about how you stitch all that supply chain, and you've got to get the stuff here and then process it and package it. Where do you do all that, and how does that all work?
We are headquartered in Boulder. We have a fully owned subsidiary in India that manages our supply chain directly from thousands of small farmers through to the port of India. So in Boulder itself, we have an R&D center and we have our headquarters office. Why Boulder is a unique story, but my first employee started with me when I was at Harvard Medical School, and during that time I was pretty MIA as her manager. So I actually moved out to Boulder temporarily just to be able to work side by side when I went on leave from med school. And then I realized, like, actually, this is such an amazing place for building a food company, because there's so many people who are really passionate about food as something, that's central to our health and well-being, that's essential to our lives, that's a way to change people's lives. and who have done this before. I was finding in Boston, it was really hard to find people who had the kind of experience in the food industry that I was looking for. And people who are as passionate about food. It's like if I was going to be working in healthcare, I would have stayed in Boston, but this is a different way to go about these big problems. So that's why then I moved the company headquarters to Boulder. And in terms of manufacturing, we have a network of manufacturing facilities across India and the United States,
Okay.
not specifically in Colorado, just because of, well, multiple reasons. But, I think it wasn't our first choice because of the Rocky Mountains and some of the freight impacts from that.
Yeah. So yeah, you've got to so you do some processing in India and you bring that over, but you also do some processing and production in the US, multiple locations. Yeah, it's hard to manufacture here. And getting stuff all the way across the world to here is costly. So yeah, totally understand that. I know some people listening will be curious about that facility in India, and there are listeners and people we've talked to that do international sourcing. The in-country thing is sort of interesting. So you have a subsidiary there, you've created it, and then people get a nice livelihood from working there and processing, and you work with farmers. How many farmers do you work with right now?
We work with 1,700 farmers right now, and
1,700.
I'd say
Whoa. 1,700?
yes.
What I find interesting about that is a lot
Yeah.
of times companies think they have to, and it depends on the crop. I don't know if there are jackfruit plantations,
Yeah.
but you can either go for
Mm.
scale where it's one huge plantation, or you can work with a lot of small scale family farmers and create replicability.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
And it's kind of the old way we used to collect milk from small scale dairies. There are still companies that do that versus, you could
Yep.
have 8,000 head of cattle in one place, or you could have 100 farmers that each have 80 head of
Mhm.
cattle and just work out your logistics of collecting that. So, frankly, I think that the way you've set that up is not without its challenges, but it supports a lot more of local economy.
A lot of people. Yeah, that's crazy. That's insane and wonderful at the same time, Annie. Um, so,
Thank you.
we have about 8 minutes left, and I want to make sure we think a little bit about the future for you, the company, and where you're headed. And I know you can't reveal too much about your innovation. I understand that, but yeah, what's your hope? Like you're thinking continue your push into distribution, and are you selling direct to consumer? What are your channels right now for getting Jackfruit, Jack and Annie's products out there? Where do you sell currently? What's your thinking about retail versus direct to consumer or online grocery? And then what's in it for you going forward? Where do you see yourself?
Of course. From a channels perspective, so we sell in retail, like grocery stores, of course, but also food service. So we sell to restaurant chains,
Yeah.
college university, corporate cafeterias.
Yeah.
Um, we also do industrial ingredient sales, so selling prepared jackfruit to manufacturers. And then we also do direct to consumer. So of
Is it all
those
frozen
channels,
product?
Primarily we have some refrigerated and shelf stable offerings as well.
Okay.
But so in terms of growth areas, like I think as a percentage of our mix, food service and industrial ingredients, we expect to increase because like over these past more than 10 years, we've had to introduce consumers and customers to what is jackfruit. And now that there's that awareness, we can expand to these other channels that really require a stronger base, like a base of understanding what the crop is and what its point of difference is. So those we see as even greater areas of opportunity for the business going forward, while we continue to see great growth in retail and direct to consumer, which we've been in for a longer time. In terms of where am I looking for the future? I mean, over this period of time, we went from no one knew jackfruit, and even building the supply chain from the beginning, we had to explain to farmers what kind of jackfruit we were looking for because no one had ever been there to buy it. commercially. So from the very beginning to now, we've seen just like such incredible growth and acceptance of jackfruit, but we also see in terms of scale what we've been driving towards is, jackfruit being a part of mainstream consumption, and the majority of our growth is still ahead of us. So first and foremost focus is on making sure that this company achieves that vision. And part of what's so amazing about what this company is able to do, we did a life cycle analysis, third party validated, and saw that jackfruit's global warming potential is 94% lower than beef's. And we actually can even directly substitute out beef to a significant percentage if you're thinking about like blended meats. And that is, another whole area of opportunity outside of specifically plant-based that can enable jackfruit to become a part of what we're regularly consuming. You think about a meat product that you can't tell is not meat, but has significantly lower fat that brings in the fiber, significantly lower calories, significantly lower carbon footprint. So we're really, first and foremost, our focus here is really bringing this to a kind of scale that we've not seen, that the industry hasn't seen yet, that we absolutely know is possible because it addresses some of the biggest problems of our time.
The natural channel is a great channel, I think, for introducing unique new hero ingredients or foods to consumers in America. I mean, who heard of acai before, Sambazone? Who heard of guayusa, or even, Frida's Finest is a specialty produce distributor back in the 80s, introducing kiwi fruit to America, and no one had ever heard of it. So as people become more aware of jackfruit, somehow I think a fair amount of that credit has to go to you, Annie, in branding, people learning about it. And I think that this trend toward a flexitarian, reducitarian, looking for less meat in the diet, but yet something satisfying. I know I've purchased some Jack and Annie's product, and they're in my freezer now. I'm a meat eater, but I'm conscious about it. But I also try to reduce that, so I consider myself a reducitarian. One of the things that I think's been as the up and down of the plant-based, it went from, like you say, vegetarian to vegan to plant-based, which again I think is a marketing term that is much more acceptable out there for people that try these products and be more conscious of their diet. And yet there's been a flood of product on the market. Investors have pulled back a little bit. What I admire in your business acumen, you were able to bring in a pretty significant investment into the Jackfruit Company and Jack and Annie's, and that's fueled a lot of your growth. Any thoughts from your experience there, or takeaway advice for other entrepreneurs out there? Because it's a tough market to find funding these days.
Yeah.
That was a long-winded question, but
yeah, there was multiple questions.
It was more comment too there.
Yeah, I mean, we've used that investment for growth and also to get quite close to profitability as a company. So I think, first of all, you need to make sure that you have a healthy margin profile. And then, apart from your margin profile with every sale, it's making sure that you're, investing your resources in a way that's really delivering ROI for investors and ROI for, for this total enterprise. And so it's kind of monitoring what's working and what's not. And as we've done that, we've really, focused in on the investments that are working and cut anything that wasn't, and, positioned ourselves to earn, more investment capital over this course of time from, way back at the very beginning, where I raised capital to bring our first container load of jackfruit over to where we are today in several thousand stores and about to launch with our first national restaurant chain and with Jack and Annie's branding. So I think in
Well,
terms of oh, sorry.
I was
Did
going
you
to
have
say
another question?
congratulations. It piqued me when you said you're getting now into food service and restaurants. That's another great way to introduce people to your products and jackfruit and ways they can reduce meat in their diet.
Thanks. Yeah, it's an area we're very excited about. But I would say, other advice for entrepreneurs is just to realize like the time that we're in right now is a very bumpy time, right? We went from having a global pandemic to massive inflation to this huge lack of exits in public markets, which is leading to investors not having liquidity, not deploying more capital, and valuations being down. And so it's sort of like and then also consumers, because of inflation, prioritizing saving money as opposed to, necessarily paying as much for premium for things that are better for them and better for the planet. And, in all this time, it's like, even if you're a market disruptor, it's hard not to feel disrupted. And so I think that it's just continuing to stay focused. And I think in that vein, it's identifying, what changes are happening, how they impact you. Do they require a change in your approach or not? And if there is a change that's required, make the change. Don't be slow about it. And if a change isn't required, don't do it and carry on.
Cool. Good words. That's I don't know how we could top that for a closer, Steve.
No, and we are at the end of our time. It's been a fascinating conversation. I know when I lose track of time myself, and it goes so quickly that hopefully our audience will also agree this has been a really enjoyable, informative discussion. And Annie, I'm grateful to get to know you a little better and hear more of your story. And Bill, thank you very much for co-hosting. Thank you all for listening and viewing in to Compass Naturals Coffee Talk. We're very excited to continue with this programming. And we want to thank all of our guests and all of our sponsors. And Bill, again, thank you. And we will see you next time in 2024. You all have a great holiday and fall season, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.
Thanks, Annie.
Thank you so much.